Hello, everyone. So good morning or good afternoon, wherever you are. It's a real pleasure to be back with you for this third live session of the Capstone. Let me begin with a few statistics about the Capstone. There are 115 of you who have completed the Capstone, and 332 have been active learners. So it's a great crowd, and I'm happy that you were able to reach the end of this specialization and yet you went through all the process. Today is an opportunity for you to ask your last questions and to interact with one another and with me. We started following the forum discussions that you've been having on the Coursera platform. And some of you are sharing feedback on what you have learned, what you have acquired as far as personal and professional development, growing your leadership skills. And I want to thank you for your involvement and your dedication and the time that you've given to this work and the very positive feedback that you have given overall. The rating for the course is 4.7 out of 5, so it's very satisfactory. There's always room for improvement, and we're always ready to listen to you and hear your feedback to make it better. Before we go into the details and follow your questions as we move on to this session, I would like to reiterate a message, which is a message linked to expectations and managing expectations. When you do an online course, whatever it is, and this one in particular, you join for a certain purpose, and this purpose is personal and is geared towards acquiring skills, acquiring knowledge, acquiring expertise. In our case, it's developing your leadership skills. Obviously, this goal has been achieved by most of you, and the vast majority of you are giving extremely positive feedback as to how you have acquired an increased self-awareness, more self-confidence, more confidence in others, and a greater capacity to lead your projects, whatever they are, professional and personal. So this is really the goal, but it's only part of the expectations. Some of you are also doing an online course to get a degree, or it's not a degree actually, it's a certificate, and to get some approval or some confirmation that you have not only pursued the course all the way with all the time and energy that this requires, but also achieved some progress. And this certificate is a testimony or a proof that you have done the work. In no case is this certificate, however, the equivalent of a diploma attending, for example, a full-time MBA in any of the institutions for which you are following your online courses. And it's very important to make the distinction between expecting from a course that it gives you this capacity to improve, and that in itself is very important. And on the other hand, a capacity to use what you've done to either get a job or get into a school. And those are two different things. So I wanted to make that clear. And if you have more questions about what I just said, I'm happy to further debate and discuss this question, because I think it's very important. Managing expectations is a very important and a key element in taking an initiative such as doing a course online. Part of your feedback and questions, we'll start with one on the Poilâne challenge, is the feedback that you've had and the interaction you've had on the particular subject and interacting with peers as a whole. And the question that came out of this is, how can you remain in the loop? Well, for one thing, remaining in the loop and carrying on with interacting with one another as the course ends now, you have the opportunity to stay online with a Facebook page, which is public. So you can always keep in touch with those of you who have joined the Facebook page. And if you haven't, please don't hesitate to do so, because this is public and ongoing. So you can always interact with one another and gain expertise and knowledge from one another through this media. Another opportunity is to stay connected regularly on the savoirrelier.com platform, which has for now just it's just an interface, but is meant to evolve and develop and create more activities for you in the future to keep in touch and keep on interacting with one another. So one, the Facebook page, two, the savoir-relier.com platform. Stay in touch, and hopefully we will manage to create more initiatives along the lines of what you experience with the Savoir-Relier leadership specialization. Another question or feedback that we received in your initial forum discussion is how we put all of this together, the personal challenge and the corporate challenges. So let me speak a little bit about that. And starting with the corporate challenges. You know that in the different MOOCs, and in the third one, particularly leading organizations, we have invited people, executives, to come and give testimonies about their reactions to some of the issues, questions, and learning that you've done in the Savoir-Relier leadership specialization. For example, Stéphane Richard from Orange, Apollonia Poilane from Poilane, or Frédéric Mazella from BlaBlaCar. I worked with each one of them to think and look at what strategic leadership issues they could have in their organization in order to make that a corporate challenge, and to make it a question, an issue for you to work on. It was a long work. First of all, finding something that was relevant for them and accurate and useful for you, and you've been faced then with one question, a specific question for each company. What is difficult in the capstone is to come up with recommendations that can be suitable, realistic, and usable for the company. And this is exactly what the capstone is about, to be able to understand the company almost from the inside as much as possible, to put yourself in their shoes, and to come up with very, very strong recommendations. We will see with the second session if anyone manages to come up with suitable recommendations that the company would value enough to invite you. The point that is very important is that in no case and in no way any of these companies put the challenge up in the form of a disguised recruitment approach. So what I'm saying here, to be very straightforward, is that the aim of the work on the capstone is not to get a job at any of those companies. The aim of the work was to think about a leadership, strategic leadership question, and to have you work on it. And those are two different things, and gets back to the question of managing expectations. So that was a process, working with each company, thinking of a case, putting it together, and having you use the Savoir-Relier relational circuit approach to deal with the problem. For the personal challenge, you have come up with your own suggestions, your own problems, your own challenges, and applying the same method, you are working on yourself. So it's a different angle, and this is where it's more linked to the educational part, so to HEC Paris, and that's where we'll be looking at your feedback and your proposals to see whether or not any one of you meets the requirements and demands and specifications of the equivalent of the leadership certificate selection process, which is currently happening for the 2017 session, which will be in April 2017. I hope I've covered these initial discussions well enough, and we now have a new question that is coming from you. Please, I forgot to say this in the beginning, as we go, I'm always curious and interested when you ask a question or when you make a comment to give a little bit background of where you're coming from and where the question is coming from. So some contextual information, which challenge you're working on, where you're coming from, a little bit of your story, so that I can give you feedback that is more personalized than just speaking in general terms, which I don't really like. I like to be more focused. I'm sure you know that by now. So in the savoir-relier.com, there is mention of 40 questions. Okay, that's a very, very good question. When I run an executive seminar or when I work with a leadership team to help them and I'm with them, it is true that the self-portrait exercise, the work on introspection, is guided through a potential of 40 questions. I don't release those 40 questions at once unless I have the persons in the room. And on the website, savoir-relier.com, you have access to 2 options of the self-portrait with 8 questions on the one hand, then 8 other questions. Part of the project that I have is to extend the Savoir-Relier platform and give new opportunities to do a third self-portrait with another 8 questions on and on until we cover the 40 questions. So this is part of the development and the potential things that you may be looking forward to in terms of continuing the experience by having access to another set of 8 questions and another set of 8 questions until you move up the ladder of Savoir-Relier experience and get other opportunities to work on yourself and do new conversations and new interactions. And there's more in store that we are working on in the development of the platform. So this is exactly what I was saying for those of you who are asking what now, what is next, for the second option, which is the savoir-relier.com platform. The idea is exactly that, to develop the platform to give you more access to more workshops, initiatives, and interactions on the platform. So one of you is asking, in the case of the first week after submitting my exercise, I did 7 peer reviews, even though mine was not reviewed. I didn't receive feedback. Could you please help me? In these questions that you have, and I see many of those popping up on the Facebook page, unfortunately, I have no, I'm not in a capacity to help with the technical peer review issue, which is really under the Coursera platform. And it's true that the system requires for people to meet up to do the peer review system. So I really believe that the peer element is a key element of growth. And in the same way that the matching sometimes to do the conversation can be difficult because there are not enough people available at the same time, and you are constrained by time, that can be an issue. Unfortunately, I cannot do anything about it because this is under the Coursera structure, which is a platform in and by itself. This is really something we are working on with the matching and the conversation peer, the peer pairing up conversation for a conversation, because we want this to expand. So the problem at the basis is the fact that you need a certain number of people to be connected in order to make this possible. And this is where the issue lies. So we're working on this with the savoir-relier.com platform to improve the matching for the peer-to-peer conversation. Now, for the peer review system, it is really a Coursera issue. I'm helped in this live session by 2 persons, Ashraf and Parth, who are also filtering and helping with transmitting your questions. And Ashraf is just telling me that he is answering peer review issue with a chat on YouTube. So you can get more feedback on this because Ashraf is from HEC and working with Coursera on improving all this, and Parth is working with me on improving the Savoir-Relier environment. So I'm getting a question from a French person from Strasbourg, and talking about the Poilâne Challenge. A tremendous contribution could have been produced by integrating our differing viewpoints in one big final contribution. It's a pity that we could not do it. Let me make sure I understand your point, and if I'm not responding correctly, please make sure that you get back to me. What I'm understanding is that you would have liked to do a collective intelligence type of work and mixing all of your responses to put one together. That is actually a very good idea. very then difficult to identify individual contributions, which was part of the initial idea. But I really like this idea of collective contribution, and it's a good point. Now, I don't know if it's a pity, because when you're doing something for the first time, you don't have all of the ideas, but definitely putting a sum of suggestions together and gathering, as you do in the leadership challenge, to get peer feedback and getting one final collective contribution is a real good idea. How can we do this? We are back with the complexity of getting you all together, and who's going to do the synthesis in the name of everyone. It's coordination, and it's clearly something that we can think about for the future. Pierre, I want to thank you for this suggestion, which I think is very relevant and a very good idea. Because in the same way, when we do the leadership certificate live, we have a group of people who are working together to put their contributions together. It's a team of 6 each time, but we even last year had 2 teams working on the same challenge. So thank you for your suggestion. I think it's a very positive contribution to what we can do to improve. Now I'm waiting for other questions or suggestions from anyone. Okay, I'm not getting any suggestion, any other suggestion at the moment. Oh yes, okay, there's one coming. Okay, has any effort so far been made to integrate the inputs of participants? Question from someone in Kashmir. Thank you very much, Arshid, for your question. I'm not sure exactly what you mean to integrate inputs of participants. Is it a question to Apollonia and asking her whether or not she has used some of the feedback she's received so far from the first session, and if she has integrated this in her strategy? You know that any suggestion, any improvement is rarely something that from the day you receive it, the next day you implement, because any idea needs to be well thought and analyzed in terms of feasibility and in terms of how it comes into execution. So I haven't spoken with Apollonia in the past few weeks, but I'm in touch with her, and we'll see. Again, in the process, we wanted to wait for the 2 sessions to be final in order to get things together and to sit down and see, okay, what do you see that is relevant and useful that you can really implement, and in what ways? So we're now just finishing the 2nd session, so this is not work that we have yet done, but it's something that I'm going to do with each of the 3 companies, to sit down with them and look at whether or not there is something from someone that is for them relevant enough to be implemented. That is the key question, the question of execution. You know that in all good strategy, and that's part of the Savoir-Relier approach, to make sure that a decision is an important thing, and making a decision is a big part of the process, but it's not an end in itself. It's the consequences of the decision that matter. And in the same way, it's the execution of the strategy or the act of leadership that matters, not the idea of the leadership. So in the action and actionable face of what you recommend, that is important. So we will definitely get back to you on that. and you'll get an overall feedback once all of your submissions have been reviewed from session 1 and session 2. All right, I'm going to read the next comment that I'm receiving from one of you. Savoir relier protocol is really useful and rich. Thank you. I appreciated also all partners' experience sharing. I can see it works for me on a personal viewpoint and for the peers sharing the same spirit of SR approach. Now, I feel it is difficult when people are not sharing the same vision, even by understanding, using questioning and inquiry, it does not bring the expected value. Should we leave some persons aside at some point? Should we change our vision but then losing some part of it? I would like to get your advice here. Okay, I think this is a very good point. We can never embark everyone on a project, on a vision, on a perception. We know that differences are important, and it's perfectly fine to recognize that some people are either not ready or not made for the kind of mindset that Savoir Relier develops, and that's fine. If it were that everyone embarks on the same process, the world would not be the world. So my advice is that if you feel someone needs this kind of mindset development, or if someone has the potential to grow into this mindset development, then spend the time and energy to convince, and sometimes it takes time. If you believe strongly in something, and if you've gained yourself something strong from the approach, then share this. And if the person, in the end, after all your energy, does not join and does not want to participate, yes, it's okay to leave people on the side. It's perfectly okay. Okay, another question. I hope I answered, and if I didn't, please make sure that that you get back to me. All right, another question from Evelyn. I have already completed the capstone and have offered my recommendation. If you were me, what question would you be asking? Well, I don't know. Again, as far as the process goes, the first session needs to be combined with the second for an overall feedback from the company. Now, if the question is related to the relationship with the company, is that they are looking at your submissions, and they decide whether or not they are relevant enough for them, and then they will give feedback on that. It doesn't mean in any way that they have a view to recruiting anyone from the MOOC. Again, if this is your expectation, it's definitely not part of the process. So if the next question is getting a job in any of the companies, this cannot happen that way. And again, the MOOC is, the whole specialization is a process of learning, and not the process of recruiting. The Coursera platform is not a recruitment platform. It's a platform for education. So the end of the process is to get the certificate, to have gone through the motions, to have acquired skills and knowledge, and to be able to transfer those skills and knowledge to new activities, new projects that you may have. So the next question you could ask yourself is, how can I put to practice in other cases in my life, in my environment, in my job, or in my next job, in order to improve as a leader? That is a core question and a core purpose of the leadership, Savoir Relier leadership specialization, to become a better leader and to apply my leadership skills to my everyday life and my everyday job, if that's what I want. So that is really where am I going to put into practice all the learning that I have acquired is really the key to your next steps, and probably the question I would ask myself. Someone is writing and being in a conflict area in Kashmir. Can you throw more light on application of SR approach to conflict resolution? I think this is a critical question. The vision of Savoir Relier is is exactly that, is trying to help people see conflicts with the capacity to understand from both sides of the conflict, if it's a two-side conflict, or from the complexity of the conflict, if it is, in order to better acknowledge the conflict. Understand the situation from a holistic perspective as well as from an analytical perspective, and bring people together so that they can see and do the same exercise and the same work, and hopefully find a solution that recreates an environment that is more positive than it is when the conflict takes place. Pretending that savoir-relier will resolve conflicts in and by themselves. What I'm hoping for is that this approach of mind opening, of building confidence, building self-awareness, and building trust, and by increasing the resilience of groups, will foster and generate more understanding and respect, so that people can work together more effectively. And that can be in business, in life, in conflict situations, and even in political environments. Whatever can be done to use this approach, because confidence is such an important feature of success, of harmony, of better performance, also is that element that I really want to push, and hopefully you can use it also step by step to try and improve the situation. And my heart is with you in this conflict situation, as there are so many conflicts around us. The savoir-relier mindset aims at helping conflicts to resolve, people from different visions, perspectives, religions, understandings of life, to come together and be able to talk to one another in a deeper way, to understand that we're all human beings, and we should aim for a better future. I have a next question from a French person, Pierre. I would like to stress how interesting I have found this SR concept. Thank you very much for this enriching approach to leadership and for your efforts in this MOOC. Well, thank you, Pierre. There is no question there, but it's always appreciated to get your feedback. Again, I'm always even more interested in getting feedback that tells your story, and in the how you feel that this has improved your capacity to lead, or to interact, or to run your projects. So whatever more data you can give me is something that I will definitely be using in my work and in my research, in improving this chain of value between self-awareness, self-confidence, trust, and a better performance. That's exactly what I'm working on right now with my research, is proving this chain of this value chain and its impact on leadership. I have a general question. If I accidentally took a wrong decision and my workers just noticed that I am wrong, what is the best way to deal with the situation? From Ahmed. That's another to the point problem that you're facing. Admitting that you take a wrong decision. So this resilience process, accepting, recognition, acknowledgement, so that holistic understanding of the fact that you made a mistake, is a first step to recovery and to working with others towards a better solution or a new environment. Hiding the fact that you've made a mistake, if you know it, is never going to serve you and help you. So the savoir-relier mindset with its genuine, generous, and generative approach and mindset and characteristics is really the way to go if you make a mistake, and you need to recognize it indeed. So I thank you for your points, which is a very good example of how savoir-relier, with its the strength, the confidence you have to admit that you've made a mistake and moving forward, is really going to help you in the future. Thank you. I also have another question from Audrey. talking about BlaBlaCar, speaking about PR in communication, the voice and soul of the organization. What is PR? I don't have the context exactly of when he says that, but PR can mean personal relations. It can mean I'll have to go back to listen to Frédéric's statement exactly. I remember, of course, this episode, but I don't have all the quotes in mind. It could be personal relations or help me, anyone, if you have another, if you've read and listened to remember this quote from Frédéric and can remember what it is. At top of my mind, I honestly, and that's one way of recognizing that you don't know, you don't remember. I don't remember the quote, so I would need the context, the exact context of he speaking to tell you what he meant. People relations, that's the big thing I have in mind. Okay, that's where we are so far on questions on the chat. Please continue asking and sharing. It's always a great opportunity to be with you and to share with you. While I'm waiting for a new question or a new comment, maybe I can share a little bit with you some data about the overall specialization and how many of you have been involved so far. We've had something, and sorry, the figure is really impressive. Something like 150,000 visitors on the specialization, and we have an ongoing pool of thousands of participants involved. Let me give you specific data on this. We have over 3,000 registered students on the specialization right now, and over 40,000 who are currently participating on and off to the specialization. And I do have an interesting point in the experience is the question of why you connect, why you stay, why you leave, those motivation, intrinsic motivation for doing the course, and what keeps you going and what makes you stop. I have noticed that the time constraint can be an issue for some, and I understand that perfectly, because sustaining attention and work when you have a full-time job and a full life can be very difficult. And I think in these online courses, intrinsic motivation is a key element. I'm always pleased to read your stories and feedback on how by sustaining your motivation and by making the sacrifices that this work requires, you have actually got a lot out of it, and that's good testimony and should encourage more people to join and to participate. I have another nice feedback in terms of insightful wisdom, talking about what we've done. I like the word wisdom. I don't know if I'm wise, but I definitely like the word wisdom. It resonates with me in terms of achieving in life enough experience and enough self-esteem and knowledge to be able to give back, and that's part of what I think Savoir Relier aims to, is when you share with one another, you're also giving back, giving of your time, of course, but also giving of your knowledge, of your experience, of the who you are inside you. And part of my research is working on the link between intimacy or proximity, so your capacity to learn more about the intimate self and share about this intimate self, which in turn gives you an opening on relationships that is very different, because much deeper than traditional relationships can be. So I think this is a very interesting feedback in terms of using Savoir Relier in a way that will help you increase two things: your level of proximity with yourself or intimacy with yourself and with others, and also your capacity for reflexivity. So self-reflection and reflection on or questioning if you want. But reflexivity is another keyword. All right, another of you is giving us feedback. As again, thank you for your nice, positive insight about the course and the interaction that it delivers and the spirit that it gives. Okay, one of you is referring to what my statement at the beginning of this session, when I mentioned that this certification should not be considered as an MBA, which seems fair. I assume this certification is enough strong to be voiced in our company. In which way? You know, the whole thing about online learning and online courses is that it's gaining clout and it's gaining recognition more and more. This recognition differs by country, and I know I'm currently in the US, for example, that in the US, because the US is a country where experience is valued as much as diplomas, and that people are recognized by what they do. So the online courses are valued because they are a reflection of your energy and time. And when you're certified in a course, it means that you've gone through the motions. So in the US or probably in Canada, the recognition of online learning is probably higher than, say, in France, for example. France being more based on diplomas, official diplomas that you get from schools. I do believe that it's the future of education, that reaching out to people who would never have access to this type of education because they could not afford it, they could not pay the fees of a full-time MBA, for example, will make a difference. Whether it does make the difference that it should at this stage, I don't know. Whether you can take the Savoir Relier Leadership Specialization certification to your boss and say, okay, now give me a raise, I'm not sure. I've always been a believer in proving yourself by your actions and not by whatever paper that you can put together. Your actions in this case are the fact that you have learned so much about yourself and so much about your capacity to interact effectively with others is what you can show and deliver on the ground. So showing you've done this is a great asset. Now proving with your actions and what you actually do and deliver, how you have improved and how a greater person you are and a more effective person on your job is what is going to make the difference and help you in your life and career and in growing. Okay, another question. Am I open to sharing this program through blogs, and how would you prefer for it to be shared? Of course, if you have appreciated and taken benefits from the Savoir Relier specialization and wish to spread the word, of course, do it 500 times, 10,000 times, whatever media you want, your own Facebook page, your own LinkedIn profile network, your personal network live. That's perfectly fine. What is important is that you respect the values and the environment of Savoir Relier when you do. One thing that I've had to do, for example, with the Facebook page is to make sure that the Facebook page around the Savoir Relier specialization is around leadership and Savoir Relier leadership approach, and it's not a place to advertise personal issues or questions, but more to interact and grow as Savoir Relier leaders, keep on the interaction and so on. But yes, to the very simple question, can you share, can you spread? Yes, please do so. With pleasure. Do I organize training sessions for real teams in real companies? Yes, I do. I work as a professor at HEC Paris, um, and I work in executive education. So HEC Paris has an executive education uh, program, not only an executive MBA, but also in-company training. And sometimes I'm also asked to do some coaching, and I do. So I do participate in guiding and helping companies and people grow with the savoir relier. When I have time, which means when research is done, when teaching is done, and when time is available. So yes, yes, I do. While we're waiting for more questions, um, I would like to reiterate the importance for me in pursuing my research on the impact of savoir relier. I was recently, actually a few days ago, at a Relational Coordination Research Collaborative forum and conference, where I exchanged with professors and professionals on the subject of leadership and relational coordination. It was a 2-day seminar involving practitioners and academics, and a very fruitful research-oriented but also practice-oriented workshop, where I always learn a lot from people around the world, not only US, because that was in Portland, Oregon, but also from Europe. There were people from all over the world. And it's very interesting how the trend and the importance of relational leadership is growing and proving strong results in different capacities and in different forms. I'm of course not the only one developing research and work in this area, and we are all so convinced and proud to see the results in different organizations, that it's very encouraging for the future in trying to keep on developing in different ways, different areas, this type of leadership approach. I'm also writing, but that's for the French press, so it's a different context, a series of articles for a newspaper called Les Echos, and I have a monthly chronicle that I end up writing, and for which I'm getting very good reviews as well. The ideas are the same, and they're quite simple, and they're very straightforward. But I really think that leadership needs this kind of input and insight in order for it to improve in the future, be it in politics or in business or in life in general. We definitely need this kind of approach. And again, it proves very useful. So my call would be to get more people involved, more people engaged in this type of approach. So back to an earlier question about how can you spread the word on the importance and impact of savoir relier leadership approach. I'm definitely thanking you and saying, yes, please do. And to the question of how, probably one of the best ways, because that's the one tangible thing that we have about savoir relier right now, is the book, Leading with Sense. I'm not trying to advertise, but it's definitely an easy reference that you can find on Amazon, and by clicking on and typing Leading with Sense, you get to the book that gives really the whole perspective on savoir relier and an in-depth view. And of course, for those of you who are in France, there is the French version, Savoir Relier, which Le Savoir Relier, published at Erol, which is a way of sending people to more data and information about the process. And the one piece of news is that it's currently being translated into Danish. So if there are people online from Denmark, it will be translated into Danish in the coming month, and you will have access to Le Savoir Relier in Danish. So that's a very a great perspective for me. And maybe other languages coming up, who knows. I know books are not the easiest way for many. For one thing, they cost money, and for another, it takes a lot of time to read. But they're still a good medium to acquire knowledge and to get in more depth into the theory, concept, and also more details about the practice. It's very complementary to an online course, I think, in terms of what you can get through reading versus through practicing. It's remember the ACE methodology, the analytical, experiential, and in the middle, the critical. So the reflexive part. So this is what I think is the best way to spread and to share with others now, is to send people to the book and wait for the platform savoirrelier.com to develop and to give more of the content, more of the 40 questions, and more access to more exercises around this approach. We're looking forward to building a Savoir Relier community that will gather more and more people with the same view to growing innovation with purpose, growing projects that are going to bring more value to the world. And this is really alongside with helping conflict resolution and dealing with places and situations where conflict is preventing life from growing in a positive way. This is what we want to do. Okay, I do have a couple of more questions. As you asked, feedbacks on the training, some comments. The peer review and conversation are great. I would think beneficial at some points to see the feedback from our co-workers of conversation. Okay, point well taken. Organizing what we do, like a feedback session when we work live with the Savoir Relier. Doing a feedback session for the online is definitely something that could be taking place either in a form of a forum or some form of interaction. Okay, very good. Marcia, Valerie, thank you for making this course available at Coursera for people around the world. It has original and practical content that adds value into professional and personal life. Well, thank you, Marcia, for your feedback and the positive input insight that you're giving here. Your vision for Savoir Relier relational leadership is very much appreciated as a template forward. Do you recall how you became first inspired to create this? Oh, that's a long story. So to cut the long story short, yes, the original idea came from the poetry element of my life, and it didn't come at first as such, but you know that my background is in comparative literature and the translation of poetry. And it's when I became the dean of the HEC MBA back in 2002, and I dealt with people and teams from all over the world, that I started applying principles of associating differences like you associate different words, and creating value like you do when you translate a poem from one language into another, that the inspiration was put together. I guess it's really a lot of the Savoir Relier approach is a sum. It's not just one answer. It's a sum of my experiences and background. And as you know, if you've done the specialization, which is the case for most of you here, it's an experience, a mix of sports and working with kids and working with very different environments and working across countries. So the multicultural element, bicultural education, all of that's put together in developing Savoir Relier. So the real life story of Savoir Relier comes from poetry and poetic translation. As I explained in one of the modules in the MOOC, and one chapter in my book, actually the last chapter of my book explains that. But it really is the sum of all this experience that I've had. And I think I'm old enough and maybe wise enough now to put things together in a more a structured way for you to take advantage of it. Thank you for taking the time, for inviting us to this live session. I wish you will, and I will be sharing the program with others. I'm a firm believer in sharing thoughts and ideas. Yes, thank you, Evelyn, for your feedback and your support. Yes, sharing is extremely important. The quality of your interactions and what you're able to put and to give is definitely something that will be beneficial. Back to my initial phrasing, the more you give, the more you get. Yes, indeed, I still believe that. And at the same time, I always want for you to keep in mind that in the 3G approach, being aware of not being too genuine or too generous is a very important way of, by knowing your limits, your capacity to build your solid self, confident self, without overdoing or without going beyond what you actually can do. And that's one advice I was sharing recently with some friends: the attention to weak signals, attention to whatever will tell you where to slow down, where to stop, where to draw the line, where sometimes to leave people on the side, to refer to an earlier question about if someone does not want to connect, how far should you go to force that person? Remember one very important point: you cannot empower others, you cannot force others. It's for people to empower themselves, and it's for you to do the best you can so that people can empower themselves and can themselves create and put that energy together and that genuineness and generosity to generate new value. Okay, one other question from Audrey. I contacted my 2 peers outside of the conversation on exercise for sharing. Some exercise require to have coworkers. It would be good to be able to relate with others from the same area, country. Yeah, that is indeed a key point. Same as the matching and peer review, that keeps coming back, and that we understand perfectly. What I have said over and over, that if there are not enough people in your area, and you see it when you put your name on the map, that there are areas where there are few people and areas where there are more people. If you don't have people in your area, one way of developing yourself with Savoir Relier is to find people live. It could be a friend, it could be someone you work with, and to explain to them the process and give them your questions and have them do their self-portrait and then do the conversation. For the peer review, it's a slightly different story, because they'd have to go into your work and get into the connection. But then in the same way, you could invite them to do the course on Coursera and become peers. Timing is always an issue, I understand. And that's the one thing that we're looking at with the savoirrelier.com platform, is to try to erase that issue of time so that it's a timeless and open platform for you to continue. We do have to find a business model for this, and that's not an easy thing, because as I'm sure you know, it requires a big investment in terms of time and people in order to develop such platform. And I personally don't have the financials and whatever is needed to do this development right now. So I'm working on this, but it's not going to happen in just a couple of days. Probably in a few months, within a year, I'm hoping to get a platform running that would answer many of your questions as to how we continue, how we carry on. So yeah, I get this is a very important point. There is a lot of useful information in the additional resources. Some publications are not available for free, only abstract. Yeah. If a lot of the publications that are referred to, if you Google them as PDF, you will find access to them. I know some of them are fee-paying. That's the cost of research. It's true that when we do research and we publish, some of the publications protect our publications, because again, the system needs money. So yes, for some of it, you have to pay. For my book, you have to pay. I cannot offer my book to everyone. I wish I could. Now you can share the content as much as possible, and business needs money to be run. So it's true that some of the resources need to be paid for, and I apologize for this, but there is also a need to sustain the businesses of books if you want to be able to have access to this information and finance the research that is behind it. So the whole system needs at some point some money. So that's why not everything can be for free. Okay, we have just 5 minutes to go, so it's almost time for me to conclude, and to again reiterate how much I have appreciated not only doing this work and building this leadership specialization, but also interacting with you and reading your feedback and following the forum and hopefully staying in touch. Building the Savoir Relier community as a future perspective to keep on improving with those values, around those values, and maybe doing something powerful for our environment. Now, in the way of conclusion, I would like to remind you that there will be another session of the capstone next year in April. We need time to take stock on these first 2 sessions and analyze what's been going on and interact with the companies that have participated in order to make decisions and improve. I have taken stock of your feedback on ideas and suggestions like the one for Poilane, or getting people together to make a collective recommendation. We will keep you in touch in terms of the new format, of the evolution and the progression of the next session of the capstone, which will take place at the same time as the leadership certificate next year, which is starting April 24. So I know it's a long time for some of you who are enrolled in the MOOC and are towards the end of the third or have finished the third MOOC and now waiting for the capstone. Unfortunately, it's not possible to sustain a rhythm of capstone more than twice a year because of all the time and energy that there is around it, around building it, designing it, and following it. So I hope you'll understand and have the patience to wait until April to do the capstone and complete the specialization. By then, there should be a number of you carrying on. And those of you who have finished, stay tuned, stay in touch, stay on the Facebook page, keep visiting the savoirrelier.com from time to time. And you will see things happening, I can promise you, in the future. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining. And best of luck in all of your projects, personal, professional, life. Keep up with the good work and with the energy that you've given in this current work for the future. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.